Hello viewers of Sounding Board, and today we are going to talk about Vanguard Illustrated number 7 from Pacific Comics in 1984. Why are we talking about a 1984 comic? Well, I got a pile of these old comics which used to have value but not anymore because the audiences grew old and lost interest or just lost entire they lost their heart in collecting comics. Basically, they grew out of it, had families, but this is one of the early comics that didn't have the comic code on it. One, as you notice right here, Satan's symbol, which wouldn't have been used in today's standards of comics. But what makes this comic book kind of remarkable isn't because it has Mr. Monster in it. It's his first full comic appearance. Michael T. Gilbert's character. But I wanted to talk about a little bit about the Ballad of Hardcore Bradley. Not because I know a guy named Bradley, but because it's a Western story. And it's about a werewolf. And, it's like a werewolf running amok in the Old West. And this is back when the cannon to stop a werewolf was silver. And very few characters had silver bullets at that time, except for one. A lone gunman. We can't say his name on this because, actually we can. It was the Lone Ranger in Tonto. Because the comic acknowledges him as a lone gunman, a masked man, a man that stands proud with an Indian. And this is back before everyone started complaining about intellectual properties and I want my cut, you can't show my character in your comic because it is my copyright. This is more a freer time, a looser time, a little bit more creative of time. Also, like I said about the comic code, this 10-page story is like an old heavy metal story. Time travelers travel to a different time, and the characters get killed, except for one, the female. Who now has to find her way home. Then we get an ad for the coming soon Mr. Monster Vanguard series. And then we get the Mr. Monster first ever story. If you were in the 80s, Mr. Monster was the thing. But as the 80s came to a close, so did Mr. Monster's popularity. People just lost interest in these little underground characters that held so much appeal, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were really weird, very eclectic, and some of them followed suit in styles like Will Eisner and the old EC comics like Michael T. Gilbert stuff did. But yeah, but when times change, heroes change, characters change. And out of this era, the only character that really survived were the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it wasn't the incarnation that were sold in the original black and white series. It wasn't until years later when they realized that maybe we should go back to the original incarnation. And now we got Hump Hammersmith, who is a complete total badass, with his faithful sidekick, who is a racial stereotype of a Hispanic. And then we get the issue for Vanity 2 by Will Miggett, and the Rocketeer number 5 by Dave Stevens. And then the ending is a pathway to fantasy. But yeah, it's like comics have evolved or de-evolved, depending how you look at it, to an uncreative level to some extent, that everything has to be politically correct. Everything has to be check boxes before it can be published. Image in the 90s was more that way than Image in the 2000s. And then the late 2000s. You know, it's stories like this, actually, comics like this, that inspired people to do Image. And this issue was probably inspired by Heavy Metal Magazine, which was the big sci-fi horror anthology book comic that came out, I think, every 6 months or 8 months at the time. And it gave us different worlds, adventures, questionable material, but it was interesting. But maybe I'll start looking at more of these older comics and talking a little bit about them now. But like I said, Hardcore Bradley was the highlight because, one, it was nice to read a Lone Ranger story. Two, everyone gets their panties all bunched up about intellectual properties nowadays that you can't get away with something like that. And it's kind of sad because there are so many stories out there that could be told. So until next time, this is the Sounding Board, signing off.